somebody that's really good at running a little tiny company is not necessarily good at running a bigger organization. Trust is everything in life. The world does not operate without trust. Families don't operate without trust. Organizations don't operate without trust. Without people, nothing happens. It was always going to come back to what mattered at Starbucks were the people first and the coffee second. You can't just do serving. You have to be in the stores. We get so caught up in the technology and we think that we can go out and people can fill out this form and all that information comes in and you know what's going on in your business. You don't. So you got to be out there all the time. And we expected our senior leadership to be out there all the time.
Welcome to Challenger X. I'm Jerome Dwight, entrepreneur, business builder with over 2 decades of experience in fintech, healthcare, e-commerce, and blockchain. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Howard Behar, former president of Starbucks North America, whose servant leadership philosophy helped transform a coffee company into a global cultural phenomenon. From humble beginnings as a son of immigrant parents, Howard rose to lead with a simple, profound belief. We're not in the coffee business serving people, we're in the people business serving coffee. He shares how trust and humility and empowering others, like letting those who sweep the floor choose the broom, were all at the heart of his leadership style. He also opens up about the limitations of data and the importance of being present to truly understand your team. This is a masterclass in leading with heart and purpose. So let's go. Howard Behar, it's my honor to have you on the Challenger X podcast. We have a lot to cover, and I've been looking forward to having this conversation. You come from a storied career at one of the most iconic brands, Starbucks. You have an incredible leadership philosophy where it's really inspiring to many young leaders who are building their own leadership path. So I want to start with early on. Walk us through your early days as a young leader, how you ended up at Starbucks, what was some of the influences that brought you into business, and share with us.
Well, like you, I'm a son of immigrants. My parents came to the United States in the early 1900s. My dad was actually born in 1895, and a long time ago. And anyway, he came, couldn't speak the language, worked at a public market in Seattle, learned the language, saved his pennies, nickels, and dimes, and opened up a small mom and pop grocery store. And so I'm a product really of my mom, who was also an immigrant, and watching them work in that mom and pop grocery store and what it took to build a small business. And when you learn those skills, they never leave you. I watched my dad, he hired people, he fired people, he bought merchandise, he sold merchandise, he cleaned the store, he did everything. At night he'd come home, he'd do the books, and I'd watch him do that with his crank adding machine, not like we have today. It was a 10 buttons across, 10 buttons down, pull the crank, and it would enter. So anyway, I grew up in that kind of atmosphere, and also because of immigrants, my mother came from a family of 13 children. Well, 11 of them made it to the United States, and pretty much all of them had some kind of small business, from being a tailor to being a bagel maker to being a jewelry store operator to whatever it was. And so I observed all that growing up, and somehow by osmosis, I took it all in. And I loved retail. And I loved retail because I love people. I was the third born of 3, but I'm still the baby and I'm 80 years old. My sister was 14 years older. My brother was 10 years older. And so, I only knew support and love, so to speak. And I appreciated that. I didn't understand it or its importance. And so when I started to go to work, I brought those experiences with me, what it took to make a business work. So, you're talking to a guy here that barely got out of high school. I had a couple of years of community college, but that was it. And I But what I had was working knowledge, and I had observational knowledge of watching things going on in my family businesses, and that helps me. And so I kind of spent my whole career in retail or consumer products of some kind, some family businesses. My brother-in-law's furniture stores, and but then I left my family's businesses and went on to work in some larger companies. I had my first really leadership role when I was 21. I was hired to run a couple of furniture stores in Salem, Oregon, and that's the first time I really got to really own something, so to speak. Be the leader of the organization and try to make it work. And of course, I learned by all the mistakes I made, but I had a great boss, the guy that owned the company, and he taught me so many valuable skills. He was the one that taught me that you're never too good to pick up cigarette butts. And he taught me to listen to what's not being said. He taught me to listen with those little antennae that we have that we can't see, but they're there. Not just listen with your ears, but listen with your eyes. Listen with your whole body. So, and so, I developed those skills along the way. And by the time, I was in my mid 30s, I had some senior management positions in different companies, and I grew from those things as I got to bigger business and public companies, smaller public companies at the time. And by the time I got to Starbucks, I was in my mid 40s. And I was pretty well formed. And I had been a student of servant leadership from the time that I'd been in my late 20s. And I continued to grow those skills and to develop those skills and to apply those skills. So when I got to Starbucks, I was pretty well formed as a leader. Starbucks was a very small company at the time, 28 stores when I joined. And I came in as vice president of operations. And I was just trying to escape corporate life at that time. I was trying to do something that was really just fun. And fortunately, I got that opportunity at Starbucks, and it fit me like a glove because coffee is a people-centric business. It's about people. Coffee, I like to think of coffee as the grease of life. You have coffee during conversations with others. You have coffee just reading a newspaper. You have coffee with romantic conversations. Coffee really is, something that we do together. Even when we're alone, we're kind of doing it together. You sit in a Starbucks store, you may be alone sitting at the table, but there's other people around you doing the same things that you're doing. So anyway, I brought those skills to Starbucks, and fortunately, it worked. I believe that we weren't in the coffee business serving people, but we were in the people business serving coffee. And that little saying seems like, what difference would that make? But it's still alive at Starbucks today.
It sounds like your early experiences gave you the best kind of MBA, the Masters of Being Around, and you walking into Starbucks with all of that entrepreneurial experience was, seems like tailor-made for you. What were some of the initial impressions of Starbucks when you joined early on? How many stores did they have, and what was the culture like when you first walked in the door?
There were 28 stores, and it was in the coffee. Everybody, when I say what business are we in, I always ask business. They'd always say, we're in the coffee business. I said, you think you might be in another business as well? And so it was very difficult at that time to get people to understand that. I mean, I was preaching people. I was preaching servant leadership, trying to get people to understand why this was important and how that would drive the business. At the end of the day, it's always about people. But it wasn't so easy. There was a tremendous amount of pushback at the time, and particularly among senior leadership and with the CEO at that time. He was adamant that we were in the coffee business. And it took me a while, but I finally got people to understand what I was talking about. I understood we were selling coffee. For most entrepreneurial organizations, they always think that the business they're in is about the service they're providing or the product they're selling. When, yes, it is about that, but it's much more about the people that are doing the work and the people those human beings we call our customers. And when we build relationships, good relationships inside our organizations, those people build good relationships with the people that they're serving. And that's what I was trying to get everybody to understand. You can't force that. It's got to be, it comes kind of talk about it, but people have to want to sign on to it and have to really, truly believe in it. That's what I brought to Starbucks.
I'd like to go back to those early years at Starbucks. What were some of the most significant challenges upon reflection you faced, and how'd you push through those?
Well, it was everything. You know, a small business like that, we needed capital, right? So when I joined Starbucks, we were losing money. We were at that time backed by, local small investors, and we were just starting to enter the realm of equity partners or venture firms. Then the people, having the right people in the right spots at the right time. Somebody that's really good at running a little tiny company is not necessarily good at running a bigger organization. So we had to get people that could stretch us, people that had bigger experience than we had at that time. And that's what we did. We found people that could really do the work, and they contributed to the growth of the company. It's all of the things. How we grew our people, because you bring people into an organization, they come with all their own baggage, and how do you take what they bring and make it productive inside your organization? That's where servant leadership comes to bear. And so, because servant leadership at its core is primarily a leader is responsible for helping their people grow as professionals, helping their people grow as individuals, and then help their people achieve their goals. And when you do that well, then people want to help you inside the organization. So I brought that there, and those were the biggest issues. Always was people and resources. I mean, we had all the usual things. We had supply chain issues that we had to solve. We had product issues, and we had to have product invention that we had to solve. We had all sorts of things that were going on inside the organization that needed to be taken care of. But primarily, it was the building the right people in the organization, because they're the ones that grew the business. It wasn't me or Howard Schultz. It was the people that we brought in that really developed the business. But they had to believe in what our greater purpose was. And in the very early days of Starbucks, people, we didn't really think about it that much. We were just doing what we were doing and selling our coffee and trying to please people within the organization and trying to please those human beings we call our customers. And so, we had to drive that first. But our business was not complicated. Our business was.
You were there when Starbucks went from 28 stores to thousands of stores. How did you and the leadership model have to change when you started scaling?
You have to let go. You have to realize that you can't touch everything anymore. What you have to touch are the people and the values and the greater purpose of the organization. That became my job. I went from the first 300 stores. I saw every piece of real estate before we did it. I was hiring all the senior people in the company. And after a while, you realize you can't do all of that, and you got to let go. And that truly means you let go. You hire great people, and then you get out of their way. I have this saying, the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom. So I was hiring people that were really great at sweeping floors. They did not need to know. They didn't need me to tell them what to do. I would say, here's where we're trying to go. Here's what the mountain looks like. Tell me what you need to get there. And that was in all areas of the company. I used sweeping the floors as an example. It didn't make any difference what it was. Hire great people and then get out of their way. Didn't mean you didn't expect what you expected. It didn't mean that you weren't aware of what was going on. But you got to let go. And so my primary role was beating the drums of culture. Who we were, what we stood for, why we were here. We were about people. And, I had two subjects I'd talk about. One was about people, and the other one was about coffee. And in that order, people first, coffee second. And so I don't care what the questions were when I get interviewed on television or newspapers, it was always going to come back to what mattered to Starbucks were the people first and the coffee second. Coffee was kind of like our art. It's like the software, right? You create the software and you're constantly improving. That's what we were doing, constantly improving products and stuff like that. But without people, nothing happens.
Your philosophy around the person who sweeps the floor, chooses the broom, resonates with me. The whole concept of servant leadership. Now, when you apply that to your hiring, what characteristics and traits were you looking for in people that would turn out to be great leaders at Starbucks?
I mean, I was looking for people. I was looking for others that understood the value of culture, the value of greater purpose, and they were people oriented. I mean, I hardly ever ask questions about skill sets. You know, if we were hiring somebody in finance or whatever, I'd let the people in finance deal with that. But my questions were, tell me about your life. Do you have a brother? Do you have a sister? What do they like about you? What don't they like about you? What do your parents wish you would have become versus what you became? You know, did they want you to be a doctor, or are they happy with you being a banker? You know, and so I always focused on those kinds of things. You know, one question I always asked, and I always said I had a magic wand, and I waved the magic wand. I said, tomorrow morning you get to wake up doing whatever you want to do in your life. What would that be? And it was amazing how many times people would say it wasn't Starbucks that they wanted to do, you know. but I wanted to know the truth. So, you know, and I'd always ask, when they give me an answer, I'd always ask a second question. Why do you say that? You know, why do you say it? What was the biggest argument you ever had with your parents? How did it get solved? What was the biggest conflict you ever had with a friend or in a work environment, and how did it get solved? And what role did you play in those solutions? So I was looking for people that could dig deep inside themselves and really look at themselves and describe their life experiences in depth, and why those life experiences mattered, and who they were and where they wanted to go.
As you moved Starbucks, or helped to shape Starbucks into more of a people-centric organization, what was some resistance or challenges you faced?
Non-believers, people that couldn't get there, you know. And you know, we interviewed people. I mean, nobody got in the door at Starbucks without at least 5-6 interviews, you know, and all different people. But sometimes somebody would slip through the crack, and in very senior positions, and they would come in, and you know, the drum beats weren't so good, and we had to figure out what to do. And I mean, it was difficult to get fired at Starbucks for missing your numbers. It was easy to get fired at Starbucks for messing with the people. We were focused on that, and because we knew at the end of the day that's what was going to determine ultimate success or failure. Did the people like what they're doing? And you know, did we do it well all the time? We didn't. We made lots of mistakes. I mean, we ended up in Canada in Vancouver with stores unionized by the Canadian Auto Workers. I mean, you know, go figure, Canadian Auto Workers, coffee business, you know. And it was because we didn't respect our people there, and we made some mistakes, and we had to correct. Yeah. And that's what always got us. When we took our eye off the culture ball, and we took our eye off the value that people gave to the organization. And that was, and even, you know, even today, you know, I'm always amazed at what can happen inside of an organization. And it's why it was so important for me to be relentless about communicating what we were about. And I don't care what country. I had responsibility for taking Starbucks outside of North America. So I opened stores in 54 countries. Well, I didn't speak the languages. You know, I didn't really totally understand the cultures, but I learned, and I realized that no matter where you go in the world, human beings are human beings. We all want to be treated with respect and dignity. We all want to grow and better ourselves. We all want more for ourselves and families. We all want to learn, and we all want to love and be loved. And I don't care what the color of your skin, religion you practice, what food you eat, what country you live in. those things are the same. Now they may come out in different forms, but I was constantly preaching that gospel about who we were. If I was in Japan, it was the same. If I was in Dubai, it was the same. And if I was in London, it was the same. I did not change who I was because of the country that I was in, or I did not let the organization not subscribe to the values of Starbucks. Now, they could interpret them according to their own cultures, but they had to be consistent with who we were. And that helped. And, we didn't change who we were because we went to Tokyo.
Howard, some critics argue that global expansion diluted Starbucks' community-focused culture. How would you respond to that?
That's just it's not true. We are probably better today than we were in the early days. It's because each operation operates on its own. I would agree with some things that size can do some damage. But size does damage because you let it do damage. You can get big and stay small, but you got to focus on the things that really matter. And I'm not here to tell you that we were perfect. I mean, in the city that you're from, when we opened in Toronto, I remember, opening it when we opened in Toronto, and we were building out stores, and we ended up with a site, a piece of real estate where there was a bar or tavern in it at the time. And the neighborhood went up in arms about Starbucks taking this site. And we ran a full-page ad apologizing and saying, we won't take, if you don't want us there, we won't take it. And we were big, pretty good size by that time. But it's paying attention to what matters. So size is just an excuse. Somebody said to me once, with all the people we can have at Starbucks, how can we expect everybody to care? And I said, how can we not? And so, again, we weren't perfect. We made lots of mistakes. I'll continue to make mistakes, but not intentionally.
How do you balance the kind of growth you had, the size of employees, growing exponentially over the years, with ensuring that employee decisions at the ground level are aligned with the greater Starbucks mission?
Yeah, that's always a big issue. That's why it's what you expect is what you get. What you reward and recognize is what you get. So it was always critical that we rewarded and recognized the people aspect of our business. Now, that didn't mean it didn't get off track. Like I said, it does. And you had to always be aware of what was going on all the time. You can't just do surveys. You have to be in the stores. We get so caught up in the technology and the data. We think that we can go out and people can fill out this form and all that information comes in and you know what's going on in your business. You don't. So you got to be out there all the time. And so we expected our senior leadership to be out there all the time. And again, the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom. The people that were running Japan ran Japan, but they had to run it in the context of that people mattered. But sometimes it might take us a while to catch up when it wasn't being done well. We had some problems. We'd opened in Singapore. We did everything internationally with joint venture partners, and we picked the wrong partner. And this was a partner that didn't care about people. We thought he did. We thought we'd done our work, but we made a mistake. It took us a while, but we finally got that person out. We bought it out, and to get them out, not because their numbers weren't good, but because how they treated their people was atrocious, and we didn't want to be associated with that. And so we were willing to pay that price. We were willing to, if people weren't being treated well, then we would step in and we'd do what it takes. And sometimes we missed it. It's just, but size did not play a role. And the way I would say this to you, and to your listeners, or audience, that look, you have a family, you got 3 children in your family, and you've been married for 35 or whatever years. You go have every vacation together. You have 2 dogs, 2 cats, and you're trying to raise and treat your family well. But, you get up in the morning and you leave the house, but instead of looking at your partner in the face and saying, honey, I love you, you yell it from the back door, honey, love you, bye, see you later, right? That does not build a relationship. It's the face-to-face communications. It's building trust in your family. Understanding that you're there as a parent, as a partner, as a spouse, there to serve your family, to help them achieve what they want in their lives, as they are there to help you. And so, it can get off, right? I had a divorce in a family. I had 1 child. Well, why did I get divorced? Because we weren't aligned, and we couldn't get aligned. That's a family of 2 in the same house, right? So size is not a reason for it not to be. It's what you focus on. I own part of that divorce, right? I wasn't paying attention like I needed to pay attention. And so, we grew apart. And that's what happens in organizations. It doesn't make any difference how big it is or how small it is. It can happen. So it's key for leadership or families or parents or spouses to pay attention.
When you have had situations where trust is broken, maybe talk us through what steps you've taken to repair that or address that sort of issue.
Yeah, trust is everything in life. The world does not operate without trust. Families don't operate without trust. Organizations don't operate without trust. Cities don't operate without trust. Countries don't operate without trust. And unfortunately, there's some people in this world that understand that, and they try to break trust, even though when they should be building it. So here's what gets trust is in a business environment where the leadership owns what goes on in the organization. When you make a mistake as a leader, you step up and you say, I blew it. Here's why I did what I did. I apologize for it. I hope that you understand, and I will do better the next time. Or some leaders, when the bullets are flying, they get out of the way of the bullets and they let the bullets hit their people, right? You hear that all the time, right? Mm-hmm. They blame. They're always looking for somebody to blame, except they don't want to own it themselves. So the single most important thing is to own it. Leaders have to own the good, the bad, and the ugly. When something goes wrong in an organization, you can't pass it off to somebody else. And I've grown from those experiences, and I learned the hard way that you've got to own the mistakes you make. I'll give you a story. So the first time I was ever president of a company, it was a land development company, and I'd become president of the company. And as I got into the role, I realized that we had significant economic problems, and I had to deal with them. So this was before the age of computers, right? So I got my team together and we sat down. We said, we got to reduce costs. What are we going to do? So we laid out a plan for what we're going to do. We're going to have to reduce headcount, right? And so we put the plan down on a piece of paper, and the head of human resources took the plan to the copier, made copies for everybody. It was on a Friday evening, but she left the original in the copier. So by about 8 o'clock that night, my phone is ringing off the hook. What's going on? What's happening? Are we going to have layoffs? All of a sudden, the drum beats were loud and furious. So I called my team back together. I said, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the office, Saturday morning, we got a problem. So I sat down and told everybody what had happened. And I said, I went around the room and said, what do you think we should do? So as I'm going around the room, pretty much everybody said, well, just deny it. Just say it's something that we're thinking about, but it's not serious. Don't worry about it. We'll let you know, whatever. And my administrative assistant, her name was Lori Christmas. She poked me on the shoulder. She said, Howard, only the truth sounds like the truth. Only the truth sounds like the truth. And I just looked at her and said, Lori, you're right. Only the truth sounds like the truth. So that Monday morning, I got everybody together in the company, 1,500 people in a big auditorium, and I laid out everything that had happened. And, it was one of those experiences that you get in life when you need it. And I thought people were going to have me. I thought I was going to be the shortest tenure president ever because of what happened. But one person stood up and he said, Howard, I want to thank you for telling us the truth. And I may be one of the ones that gets laid off, but I want you to know that I will do everything I can to help you and the rest of the organization get through this. And one by one, everybody in that room stood up and started applauding. It was such a valuable lesson for me, right? That only the truth sound like the truth. Trust your people. They can deal with the problems. It doesn't mean scare them to death. I don't mean that, but give them the information. They can deal with it. They can deal with it. Some people may get frightened and leave, but all right, that happens. But when you trust your people and you tell them the truth, when you take responsibility for the things that happen in the organization, when you're accountable and vulnerable as a leader, it's amazing how that builds trust. And that's what you got to have in organizations.
Howard, we are entering a world now post-COVID where we have remote work, we have AI helping with decision making and even replacing some jobs. There's globalization. In this new world, does your philosophy about empowering employees still apply? What are your thoughts on that?
If it ever applied, it applies now. This is when it really applies. You got to double down on people now because they're the ones that get us through. And you have to tell them the truth. If you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know. Let's see if we can find out together. Or maybe it's the AI issue. I mean, how many jobs are going to get replaced? Is it going to be really significant? How big is it going to be? What are the jobs that come about because of it? We don't know the answers. I don't like to hear tech people say, don't worry about it. Because they're the same people that told us not to worry about social media, right? They're the same ones that told us, hey, this is going to be the greatest tool since sliced bread. Don't worry about it. And look at the problems that it's caused. It's done good too, but it's caused problems. So if you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know. Let's work on it together. But we will get through this together. The problem is when we don't get through it together, when there becomes winners and losers. And that's going to kill us because it will break down trust. It's what's going on now. And some people take advantage of that breakdown in trust, right? And just creates more distrust. And they get in power positions because they're seen as the person can be trusted when they're not the one that, because they're the ones that have done everything to break down trust. And it's happened throughout history. If you want, there are, get the name of the author that wrote 12 volumes on the history of Western civilization, Will Durant, right? And if you want to learn what's really going on in the world today, read those 12 volumes. Because throughout our history, we've gone through it when we've had leaders that have been autocratic, we've had leaders that have been servant leaders. Servant leadership is not new. It's not some thing. We've had great leaders and we've had bad leaders. And that's the way of the world. And we're going through times right now where we've got bad leaders. We've got leaders that intentionally break down trust so that they can gain power. And you see it in companies. There are leaders in companies that intentionally break down trust. They're the ones that sit around the water cooler after the meeting's taking place and they say, did you hear what's going on? Do you believe in that stuff? We shouldn't have to do that, instead of getting on board, and you see it all the time. So, if there was ever a time that servant leadership mattered, it matters now.
Howard, in the last few minutes we have, looking back at your incredible career at Starbucks and even before Starbucks, what would be one or two personal lessons you've learned during your career that you'd like to share with the viewers?
Okay, well, there's two things. First one is live your life with intention. You don't want to wake up at 80 and ask yourself, what the hell happened? Want to wake up at 80 and say, you know, I lived my life the way I wanted to live it. Did I get everything done? Did I live it always uh, with the values that I wanted to live it by? Maybe not everything, but for the most part, I look at my life and I say I lived it the way I want to live. And the good part about it is no matter what age you are, you can change, right? If you're 15 years old, you can learn skills and you can be what you want to be. If you're 80 years old and haven't lived your life with intention, you can start doing it right now. The second thing, and probably the most important thing, is learn about yourself. I have a picture in words, I'll show it to you, of Howard. In 50 words or less. You're not going to be able to read it, of course. But I've had this for over 40 years, almost 50 years. And this has my mission statement on it. This has my core values on it. And it has what I call my 6 Ps, how I do everything. This is how I live my life, according to these things. And so people need to take the time to do the work that, first of all, decide what their core values are. You can go on the internet, there'll be 300 words that represent human values. Get it down to 8 to 10. It takes a long time to do that. It doesn't mean there aren't 50 or 100 that represent some part of your life, but get it down to the 8. These are the ones, no matter what happens, this is what you're going to do. My first core value is honesty. No matter what in my life, I will tell, it may be only my truth, but I will tell you the truth, according to Howard. So it's my first core value. So I live my life according to my values, and I hold myself accountable. Before I go to bed every night, I look at the mirror in the bathroom and I say, Howard, how did you do today? And I evaluate my performance against my values and against my mission. My personal mission goes like this. Every day I want to nurture and inspire the human spirit. It's beginning with myself first and then others. So you're allowing me to live out that mission today by allowing me to express the beliefs that I have about life, about living, and about leading. So you're letting me do that. So I try to do, sometimes it's just picking up a piece of paper off the street, you know, but it's nurturing and inspiring the human spirit. And so I try to live my life according to this plan. And, you know, it took me a long time to get in sync with all of this. Do I do it all the time? No. There are days when I look in the mirror and say, Howard, you failed. I didn't treat somebody with respect. And I have to own that, and I have to fix it. So, you know, number one, you know, decide who you are, figure out who you are as a person, hold yourself accountable, have it written down. And then the final thing is have goals for your life written down. You know, if you're just thinking about it, it's just wishes, hopes, and dreams, right? You want to have really goals that you want to accomplish in your life, in all facets of life, from spirituality to material to economic well-being, to growth, to your marriage, to your children, to all the things that go to make you a whole human being. And have some goals, 3 and 5 year goals that should be in sync with your values and your mission.
It's a great way to end the show. Howard Bear, what an honor to speak to you. You personally inspired me, and I'm sure our audience will be more than inspired to live a people-first leadership model. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.